The other day I was talking to a coworker and he was telling me about a job interview that he just gave. Our company is currently hiring some software developers, and he's a more experienced software developer than me, so I was curious to hear what kinds of questions he usually asks. And he said that his favorite question to ask our interviewees is to code the power function. The power function is just a function that you use in your program to calculate an exponent. And in that function you give the base number and then the exponent number, and then you do the calculation. For example, 2 to the power 3. 2 is the base number and then 3 is the exponent, and then when you put that in your function is just going to calculate 8. So why does my coworker like to ask this question when it comes to job interviews? He said it's because when you ask this question to an interviewee, you can really tell what kind of programmer he is based on how he answers the question and based on how he codes the solution. So in this video, I'll be going over a simple way to implement this function, why the simple implementation is bad, and things that you should watch out for if you were asked this question in a job interview. So let's get started. By the way, if you're in the early stages of your programming journey, I've got a special gift for you. It's called my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a guide that will take you from no coding experience to building your first 4 projects. And the best part is it's free. It's a free gift to you. In this coding challenge, I guide you in 30 days to build 4 programming projects, and I give you some tutorials that are in C. But of course, these projects are really generic and really beginner friendly, and so you can actually code them in different programming languages. You can still benefit from this guide because you can just take the principles that are in my challenge and then apply them to your programming language. You can find the challenge in the link in the description, and if you download it and pay attention to what it says, you'll definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts that will give you a good foundation to your software development journey. So after I talked to my coworker about the power function, I went online to see if there were other people talking about it too. And I found this article by Rachit Gupta. I'll put a link in the description for this article. And I think this is a good article to look over if you're about to prepare for a software job interview. So in this article, the author talks about how he works at Amazon right now, and he's doing a lot of interviews, and this is the question that he asks. He asks to implement the power function, and this is what it looks like. This is the base number, and then this is the exponent. And like I said, 2 to the power 3 is equal to 8. And then he talks about how this is a typical response that you would get. So basically, the developer takes the base number a and then uses a for loop to multiply a to itself b times, which is the exponent, and that makes sense, and that's what a power function should do. So let's code this and see if it works. So here's the simple and easy implementation, and then we're gonna call it and use 2 as the base number and 3 as the exponent like I mentioned earlier. Then we're gonna run it and let's see what happens. Okay, it gives you 8, so it actually works. So in this article, the author talks about how this is a major turnoff, and there are multiple problems with it. When I talked to my coworker, he said that this kind of implementation wouldn't be really impressive to him. And that's because, like the author says here, it's of mediocre complexity. Basically, it means you have to run this calculation b times, and that's what the for loop does. It runs it b times, but you can actually optimize it more. If b was an even number, you don't have to do this for loop calculation b times. You could actually put another times a here, and then you can only do it half the amount of calculations. So for 2 to the power 4, which is an even number, you can actually do something like this. You can cut the number of calculations in half, and then you can just multiply times a twice. And then see, you'll get the same, you'll get 16 also. So this solution is more optimized. But this only works for even numbers. But if you want to do something for odd numbers, you can just put an if statement here and check if it's even or odd. So my coworker was more impressed if you were able to reduce the number of calculations. But in this article, the author also talks about other reasons why this implementation isn't good. He talks about how it doesn't handle negative numbers. So in the article, the author also had an issue with this implementation, not only because of the complexity, but also because this implementation doesn't know how to handle negative numbers. For example, if we put a negative number here, it probably won't work anymore. So if we try 2 to the negative 3, if you put negative 3 in here, I starts off at 0, so 0 will never be less than negative 3. So it's not going to give us the answer that we want. So it gives us 1, but 2 to the negative 3 is not 1. It's actually 1 over 2 to the third, which is 1 over 8. The other issue that the author had with this implementation is that it doesn't take into mind big numbers. For example, what if b was a huge number like 20? Like it says here. And the reason 2 to the power 20 may not work is because the return value is an int, and the int data type might not be able to handle that large of a number. But let's try it. Okay, so this is actually the correct calculation, but say we did 2 to the power 200. Okay, it gives us a 0, but 2 to the power 100 is actually a huge number. So those are the main issues with this implementation. So what is a better implementation? Alright, so I went to ChatGPT, and this implementation is actually really good. First, it handles the case if the exponent is 0. If it's 0, it just returns 1 right away. No calculations necessary. It doesn't even need to go into the for loop. And then if the exponent is negative, say it's negative 3, it does what I was mentioning earlier. It does the 1 over 2 to the power 3. 2 would be the base number, and then if exponent was negative 3, this would just turn into a positive 3, and then 3 minus 1 is 2. So then you would have 2 to the power 2 here times the base number, which is just 2 to the power 3. So it would actually give you the right number if it was 2 to the negative 3. And then this is what we had earlier with the simple implementation. And then on top of that, ChatGPT is using the double data type. And the double data type is generally better for calculations, and I think it also stores larger values. So let's see how this one performs. Alright, so let's try it. Let's see, 2 to the power 0. Okay, it's good, it's 1. That's the correct answer. Now let's try 2 to the power 3. Okay, there's 8. Okay, now let's try 2 to the power negative 3. Oh, and it would actually give us a decimal because doubles are good with decimals. Earlier I was using int, but int is not going to give us a decimal. It's always going to be an integer. So that's why another reason why double is a better data type to use. Alright, so it gives us 1 over 8. Alright, now let's try the huge value that I was talking about earlier. Oh, and it actually gives me a huge value. Wow. And according to Google, this is the answer. And that's what we got, 16069 blah 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 blah. But if you were to give this implementation in your job interview, I don't know if the interviewer will be that impressed. He might think, oh, you probably just memorized the solution. I think this article gives some good job interview tips. You don't want to just give the solution, and that's because when an interviewer asks you to do a coding challenge, they're not really asking about whether or not you can code the challenge. When an interviewer asks you to do a coding challenge, they're more concerned about how you think and how you approach the problem. So here the article is talking about how asking this coding challenge, it tells me so much about the candidate. They want to see if you're thinking about any other test cases than the ones that were provided other than these two. They want to know if you're thinking about the complexity of the problem, which is what my coworker was concerned about. And they also want to think if you've ever thought about the output of the function, if it could be potentially be a huge value. So the power function coding challenge isn't really about can you code this challenge, it's more about how do you approach this challenge. That's what the interviewer really wants to know when they ask this question. Alright, so I hope this video was helpful for you and it gets you thinking about how you approach your next job interview, and I hope you really nail that job interview. Alright, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. And if you have any questions about anything that I went over in this video, feel free to let me know in the comments section. I'd love to answer you there. And please like and subscribe to this video if it was really helpful for you. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.